What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's show. We are very excited to be talking about back pain rehab strategies with our resident physical therapist and physiotherapist, if you're here in Australia, Phil White from ADPT Physio. This episode is brought to you by the UMS app. There is a link in the description or on our homepage. You can get coached by us for less than $2 a day. It is amazing. I use it myself and I'm loving it. Before we get started, if this is your first time joining us, my name is Yanni Burmeister. I've got my brother and co-founders Rad and Richard below us, the head coach to Unity Gym and co-founder as well. And of course, in the bottom left square is Phil White from ADPT Physio. ADPT Physio delivers the athlete experience to everyone, and they are, I believe, the best physios in the world. You heard it right here. I'm actually going up to get a massage from him later on today. Very excited about that. Yeah, we're continuing on this week's discussion. We really did a deep dive yesterday on why we believe chronic back pain can shorten lifespan. And we shared a story from my father. We shared my story of rehabbing back pain, and we also shared Rad's story of rehabbing back pain. We all have very different issues or histories, injury histories. And yeah, our goal is to get you from experiencing back pain, whether it's chronic or anything at all, to being like us, confident to exercise every day and optimize your health and not worry about it, make it a thing of the past. Very excited to hear Phil's perspectives on this. Yesterday, we talked a little bit about the concept of injury identity and having to overcome the psychology, which is one of the main things that we need to deal with. And, before I throw the mic over to the boys, I'd like to say that, if you are experiencing back pain and you missed yesterday's episode, both Rad and I have come from a place of really severe back pain and injury. I fell off a horse. Rad has a spondylolisthesis pars defect and fell down a hole, believe it or not, true story, when he was in the military. And
Makes it sound really
we
bad.
we
I fell down a
sympathize
hole.
with you. We sympathize with you. We may be a little further along the journey from you, but we are living proof that you can overcome quite severe injuries. And we want you to be confident, based on us sharing our stories. We don't want you to feel discouraged at all. Phil, how are you? Great to have you.
Yeah, good. It's been a couple of weeks, I think, since we've had a little Wednesday kind of injury discussion live stream. So always enjoy being here. And if we do have a kids show maybe in the background, is that you, Red? All good.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get the comments up so I can see what people are
Yeah,
doing, and
sweet
let's
as.
get ads first.
Yeah, all good. But yeah, ready to chat about the discussion. I think it's such a back pain is such a scourge on society, and I think it's been unfortunate that so many people have back pain as a reason to stop doing what they love, because there's so much sort of fear around doing anything when you do have back pain. So yeah, I think trying to promote a message of being a bit more active within your means. Like there's obviously going to be certain situations where you do want to be a bit more careful, but really trying to nut out when it's okay to get the green light to go ahead and train, I think is such an important discussion for the world at large. The opioid epidemic is a sign of just how out of hand it's got, because so many people's onboarding onto that is because of medication for back pain particularly.
Yeah, and I shared yesterday that I had a period of my life where I was like, I thought that it was a reason why I got addicted to other drugs too, because I had a conversation with a friend of mine. I'm sure people can relate. When you start to use really heavy painkillers, eventually they don't work as well. Like that, your body just sort of built. This is the experience I had, and my friend shared this the other day too. That you tend to start to need more and more and more of them, and then he said, like, I got to a point where I was having four. What are they called? What is the strongest sort of pain opioid we get here? Rad,
Anodine Fort.
No, not Panadine Fort. You get it after an operation. I had it for my eye recently.
Oxycodone.
Yeah, oxycodone or whatever. No, it's oh man, it's like
Anyway, the strong
heroin.
stuff. Yeah,
Heroin in a pill,
the strong
basically.
stuff.
And he was sharing that he was having four of these, which you're only meant to have one or two, and a bottle of red wine to just knock the top off his back pain. And after he had his hip replacement and discs fused together and all this sort of stuff. And it's just like, oh man, it's a slippery slope. Anyway, I digress. Back to Phil. Yesterday, I'll just quickly sort of preface. We spoke about this concept of stepping stones and the journey being different for everyone. And one of the mistakes that people make is that they sort of try to introduce exercise based on the wrong things. Maybe it's a friend who takes them to the gym and they start doing exercises based on what that friend does or whatever, and then they have a bad experience, or they don't have the right supervision and they try to do it on their own and they do something that causes a bad experience, and then they form this opinion that exercise is a problem, not a solution. What is your take on that, Phil?
Yeah, I think everyone is so different, and everyone's going to have different experiences that will inform how they experience their own back pain. And if you've heard any of our pain science discussions before, you would know that pain is not a one-to-one damage equals pain experience. Your pain experience is very much related to your thoughts, moods, belief, context, as well as some other factors in the spinal cord level, and also which nerves happen to be stimulated. But it's a sensitivity thing, and that's then taken through your brain's thoughts, moods, belief, and context. So certainly, anytime you're like people with back pain in the media, in like popular culture, with family members, with friends, everyone will have heard of people who've had different back conditions, and that really informs your thoughts, moods, belief, context, which will often change how you then experience pain. And like I had a recent patient the other day she was just so unable to flex at all through her spine because she's just got that message of like, you have to get your back straight and your back is not stable. And even like the terminology used in a lot of back pain and back injury, like slipped disc, makes you think of something being inherently quite unstable. All of this kind of permeates into this real fear around loading through the back. And then we start to treat it differently to the rest of the body, where people generally realize that loading, gradual progressive loading, is something that's going to be therapeutic. But because it's got this kind of extra like mystique around it, and fair enough, the spinal cord is a really important structure that can have some things that are really like essential for I guess functioning, but it feels like it's kind of gone too far the other way, to the point of people just being so afraid to actually load their spine that then you don't get all the benefits of progressive overload.
Yeah. Do you reckon that it comes from, like my perspective, I've, because when you go to doctors or people that aren't, like their expertise isn't in exercise and movement, it's, maybe a better description of a doctor is, the expertise in medicine and diagnosis and general health and things like that. And when I've been to a doctor and the advice has been, take these painkillers and avoid the movements that are going to make it worse. And people, often a doctor is the first point of call for somebody. And if you don't know any better, you're going to listen to that advice. Do you think that is a contributing factor into this belief that, you shouldn't do the things that we're advocating?
Yeah, I think it's a really challenging space in particularly, I mean, in Australia is where the context that I've seen it the most, but I know in America and the UK, similar issues of like time with doctors is often very limited. Like my partner is training to be a GP. She's been an emergency doctor for many years, and she's now trained to be a GP. And, you've got 15-minute appointments, and she's often running over time because she wants to give people more context, more information. But when the medical system is set up such that for a doctor, like for a GP clinic to make money, you do really need to see a lot of people, particularly with the state of, I guess, public funding for healthcare in Australia. And I know that in America, it's probably, there's not much of a public funding. And in the UK, there's such demands on the NHS, the National Health Service, that basically to make a business work, they have to see so many people. Like our mate who's, works just across the road from the gym that my clinic's in, and you guys, obviously where Unity was, he sees 60 people a day. And so the amount of time you get with each person, the amount of like mental bandwidth as well you have for each person is just so limited that they can basically only do the bare minimum. And medico-legally as well, like as a registered health professional, as a physiotherapist, like we were having a discussion just before this about even naming this episode, because there is so much kind of, like legal challenges around advice that you give. And I've often felt a bit like stressed about being on even podcast and doing my own podcast, because there are like giving advice that then someone takes out of context, or someone just runs with and does something that then leads to them having a bad outcome. They can go back and say like, oh, you told me to exercise and now suddenly I've got issues. Whereas if you can give someone a really like well-known pharmaceutically researched dosage that's meant to be safe, and you don't tell them to do anything, then like medico-legally you're in the clear. Whereas I think ideally like there would be some incentive to get people active and getting people to go. And now people are doctors are getting better at saying go see a physio to get a graded return to exercise. But for so many GPs out there particularly, they're so time stressed, they need to they don't know enough about everything because they need to know so many topics that they then just take the easy route, which is just take this pain medication, stop doing the thing that hurts, and then that's about the extent of the advice. And it's a real shame because that just sets up this kind of culture, this system that does not facilitate confidence in people's own bodies. And it's a big topic, and it's going to be different in every country and every sort of jurisdiction. But I think that kind of gives a bit of context as to how we got to this place
where we are. And so now we need to figure out how we get, and I'm going to use myself and my brother as an analogy, a comparison, because I do believe that we have achieved something that's quite rare and desirable, which is to be pain-free generally. And we generally both only experience back pain now when we don't exercise, funnily enough. We have this saying that actually came from Phil that we have printed on t-shirts. I'm wearing one right now. Motion is lotion. And it could not be more true when described. Hey, there you go. Hey, and so it could not be more true when describing myself, and I believe Rad as well. If I go 2 weeks without exercise, other than the psychological impact it has because of my constant battle with anxiety and depression, it affects me like pain-wise. I start to feel stiff first of all, then I start to feel like discomfort in my sort of lower back and sort of rib cage, and then eventually it's like debilitating. It gets really bad, and that's due to a number of factors. But so
I want to throw,
but just very quickly, because there might be a lot of people sitting there going, yeah, but what's you invest so much time in exercise, what's the overall overarching point? I can tell you right now that there will come a time in your life where you will experience a rapid decline in health if you haven't banked some time exercising. And you don't have to be as extreme as we are, but it hits everybody. It hits everybody at a certain time in their life where it really starts to become a problem if you haven't moved enough throughout your life, and we tend to survive.
I want to
survive for a long time without experiencing the symptoms to that. And then all of a sudden it comes on strong, fast and strong, and it hits you hard,
Well, I want to throw something in that I want, that I'd love to hear Phil's perspective on, a practicing sports physio and physical therapist. I remember when we went and trained with Ian King. Ian King is
I didn't do that.
They're talking about Yanni. Okay. So he is a phenomenal coach he coaches mostly Olympic athletes, strength and conditioning. And he said a really interesting concept to us, and I wanted to get Phil's take on this. He said, in my experience, if it took you 10 years to develop an issue with your body, it's going to take 10 years to fix it. And we all kind of went, whoa, like this. And he said, well, think about it. He said, if you've got something like he used me as the example. He talked about my anterior pelvic tilt and the spondylolisthesis and things like that. And he said, if this condition has developed over time where it's just progressively gotten worse and worse and worse, it's not something that you can just go and do 2 or 3 sessions with somebody and it's fixed. It's something that you progressively are going to improve. And a lot of people get really turned off by that concept, this idea that it's going to take more work than what they're willing to sign up for. But tying into what Yanni said, like my personal experience after being a coach or a personal trainer, whatever you want to call what we do for almost 20 years now, is that when people come to you for an issue that they're not willing to work on to get better, it's not like they just stay where they're at now. Like if they've got back pain that has progressively gotten worse to get them to a point where they're going to come and see you, if they don't work on it, it doesn't just stay where it is, it gets worse. And so, you know, tying into what Yanni said, how long is it going to take, or how much work are you going to have to do, or how many people are you going to pay? Whatever it is that you do, if you're proactive about it, at least it's going to start getting better. And I can say that when I made the decision that I was like, man, I'm not willing to live with this back pain anymore. It wasn't something that changed like that. It was something that it just progressively and slowly got a little bit better over time. And a massive part of that was going to see Phil. Like how many sessions have I had with you, Phil? Hundreds. I can't even count how many, but I was so invested in the outcome that was well worthwhile, you know, doing it. And I'm not saying it takes that many sessions to get a result, but my level of what I wanted to achieve, I was just always wanting to know what's the next step? What's the next step? How can I get better?
Yeah, so with all due respect to Ian King, can I just jump in because you did ask my opinion on that thought of,
yeah, of course,
you know, something taking 10 years and it taking, like, I don't agree with that as a way of thinking about this. I think that's a very kind of structural idea of how the body works, of this sort of idea that you've, you know, built this structure over time and then you've got to change the structure to have a different experience and different function. And that, you know, when looking at tissue healing times or tissue adaptation times, then, you know, sure, if you're thinking about trying to get like totally new ligaments and bones and cartilage remodeling and changing some shape or something like that, then, you know, you might think of these sort of long-term outcomes. But because, like, as understanding has changed over the years around this sort of, you know, more biopsychosocial model of healthcare, of how the brain, your psychological state, your facilitators and barriers to health and exercise in your, you know, social kind of economic standing, like all of these factors do play into it, and the way that your thoughts, moods, and beliefs really impact your pain experience and function. Like you don't need to have this massive structural change. Like you still got a anterior pelvic tilt. Like it's not like you've suddenly got this, you know, different body that doesn't have a pars defect anymore. It's that structure hasn't like massively changed, and that's not what's causing you to have this great function. It's your gradual, like, you know, I guess it's that like buy into the process of training your body and training your mind to adapt to the loads that you have, and to build that confidence in that your back is strong and stable. And that kind of mental change along with the physical stimulus has meant that you're now a really, you know, physically and psychologically resilient athlete. So while I do totally respect Ian King and all the amazing work he's done in strength conditioning, I think that his understanding is sort of based in that sort of structural paradigm that has been proven to
and also what I just said is my memory of something that he said 10 years ago.
Yeah, of course.
Probably not the exact context of what he said.
And I also want to point out that, the context is very relevant here, because, you know, when you speak to someone like Rad in a room with 10 or 11 elite level coaches, personal trainers, and that's what the environment was that was said or similar, you would never say that to a general populations person. He would, if that's what he said, he would have said it only because he knows that Rad's already dedicated 20 years to his training, and he's likely to dedicate another 20 years to his training. And so you're not going to put him off by going, oh my God, another 10 years of training. I guarantee you no professional in their right mind would ever say that to a general population who's trying to start exercising to fix back pain.
And just to be clear with people, when I talk about, you know, helping their back pain, is I'm saying you're going to, like, ideally need to train for the rest of your life for this, but that doesn't mean that, you know, you won't get a great improvement in a shorter term. Like I think that exercise and loading is so important, but I just think that idea of, if people think like, oh, I'm not going to get better for 10 years, and that then influences their thoughts, moods, belief, context, and can change the way that they experience pain.
And I also just want to point out, because there's a lot of people that would be watching this, I certainly would, who would be thinking, who the hell in their right mind is going to be able to afford 100 sessions with a physiotherapist like Rad's just sort of mentioned there, or something like that? And I want to just say straight up, there are people like Phil and us who have incredible solutions. And what it really is all about is just getting the right guidance at the right time. And there are really cost-effective ways. Like Phil's got an amazing Facebook group that is, I believe at the moment, free to join. And he stays connected with members there. So you don't have to keep booking in expensive, costly physical therapy sessions. to stay in touch and get guidance and post
and with
videos of
Rad,
yourself
like
doing
most
exercise.
of our kind of interaction, like most of our consultations have been basically stuff on the gym floor while we've been training together and just giving tweaks and advice and guidance on what he's doing, not come in and get a certain thing done to try and like change something structural. So
that's exactly right, and that's what you're sort of recreating with that Facebook group, right? Like that's the whole purpose
so
of
I've
it.
called it this like physio accountability group, because basically the things that we need to be able to be like pain free and performing at our best long term, it is sort of frustratingly simple all of the times. Like people really do try and overcomplicate it, but as you guys have built just a really nice balanced training system that's then very achievable to do long term, like that's what people need. But it's the consistency of doing the simple things in a progressive way for a long term, which I think like Rad, I mean, Yanni, you're an amazing athlete, but you're more of you have spurts of extreme training and then you kind of die down. Whereas I think, Rich and Rad, like you've just got this incredible like discipline to do the simple things consistently for long enough to get a great result. And I think that's the real secret sauce. And, I'm a bit more like Yanni in this state where I get a bit like super motivated about one thing, push really hard for a while and then, kind of like find it a bit harder to be on the wagon the whole time. And I think what the system that you guys have built up with the app, where you get that kind of social fun, like it's really nice to see, Yanni's challenge on the app at the moment. Like it's, I think, getting those sort of things for people like me and Yanni who need that kind of interaction and that sort of gamification and that like accountability. Like that's what keeps you engaged long term in these things that really do train your body and mind to, not only feel good exercising, but also love it and be engaged with the process and the community. So,
mate, I'm actually Mr. Consistency right now. I'm just following our app from phase 1.
Yeah, well,
and
that's the thing. That's
and
what you've had to hack your brain by using this, like
the app. Absolutely.
And I'm exactly the same. Like if I don't have that sort of strong plan to follow, then I just kind of get shiny object syndrome and go really hard at one thing for a while, and then I go somewhere else. So I think,
and that's what I was going to also say. Phil's got his physiotherapy accountability group, and we've got the UMS app, which is like less than $2 a day, and you get an incredible amount of coaching and support and the community forums and leaderboards and stuff to help trigger that motivation. And I'll tell you, like, I'm exactly what Phil said there. I'm a workaholic, and I'll very comfortably sit here in my office all day working. One of my the biggest job, when someone asks me nowadays, what do you do as part of your job? My job is to decide where we deploy our capital, our assets, which is our time, our energy, and our money. And that takes a lot of thinking and a lot of thought and a lot of study and a lot of research. And I sit here all day, and I'll happily do that. To get to the gym, I'm not someone who likes exercising. I really despise having to get up, interrupt my day, and go to the gym. But I value with utmost respect how it affects me, the positivity that comes out of it. It both in my ability to work, in my ability to turn up for my kids, and in my ability to motivate and inspire our tribe and perform better here. And I know how it's an integral, critical part of my day. And now that we've got the app and I can just go turn it on, and I really do. And the hardest thing that's been for me is that I used to listen to podcasts during my workout or interviews or news or something that I wanted to listen to. And now I've got to listen to Rad, and eventually it'll be Richie in the follow alongs, but it really keeps me consistent. It keeps me efficient. And I'm getting my workouts done in an hour. It's phenomenal. And that's the biggest deal for me, because I used to just fart ass around and a workout would blow out to 2 hours really quickly and I'd lose that time. Now I'm up to the gym, bang, hour, back into the office working. And I feel like I'm getting a lot more done in my workouts. I'm getting a better result. So kudos to us for creating the UMS app, the Unity Gym app, I should say.
Listen, I want to say, and this is my final thought for this topic because we have to wrap it up. As always, I'm terrible at explaining myself when I try to talk about what my journey's like and what it's like and how to motivate people. And you guys always correct me like you did. And I realized what I said, how that could demotivate people. But my point was that, like, if we go back to when we were talking about, this slippery slope of being on painkillers and believing that, the painkillers are the solution to your problem until you get to a point where you are scared of exercise because you think it always hurts you. My point is that the difference where I was, because I was at that point. We spoke yesterday that I got at my worst when I was in my late teens, maybe early 20. I think I was about 19. I was on a walking stick for about 10 weeks. I was in so much pain and I was so heavily medicated. And the only reason that I got from there to where I am now is that I was so determined to not give up. And I was so determined that exercise and movement should be a part of, you know, what it is that you can do. And back then, over this 10 or 15-year period, like until I met Phil, I didn't have like a good sort of single place that I could get information that kind of put it all together for me. But the journey of being committed to living a pain-free life and being able to do the things that I love was well worth spent. Like it was, you know, if I think about where I'd been now, if I didn't follow on that journey. And yes, you're right. You don't need to do 100 physical therapy sessions. You don't need to spend 10 years doing it, like what Phil said. But the point that I was trying to make is that I really believe that people should make that commitment that they're going to explore this journey into exercise. And if that begins with seeing a physical therapist like Phil, who can really guide you into this return to exercise sort of strategy. And then once you're in that point where you can be confident that you understand what it is that you've got within your back and then and continue to exercise, that you do continue that it's not like it's not like you start an exercise program that has a start and a finish, where in your mind you're thinking, you know, I'm going to do this for this amount of weeks because that's what I was told I should do, and then that's the end of it. I guess that was the point that I was trying to make, and of course, as always, I explained it terribly.
No, you're good. I just wanted to, really just kind of clarify that a few of those ideas there.
Now, yeah, of course.
Quickly just give a few more bits of actionable advice. Like when it comes to pain and symptoms, like there's going to be a vast array of different things you can feel that would classify as back pain or back symptoms. And it's really key to realize that, you know, not all of them are equal, and there are signs and symptoms. So symptoms is something you feel, a sign is something objective that someone can assess. So there are signs and symptoms that do suggest that there might be more at play than just sort of your classic like muscle spasm or things that we can kind of push through. So I have done an episode on my new podcast that I'm doing. It's called Things I Wish My Patients Knew, because I'm basically trying to give a bank of information that people would generally come in and pay me to tell them, but I want to be able to really implement all that information in our session. So I'm trying to give it all away in this Things I Wish My Patients Knew podcast. And I think episode 2 there is about key like red flag signs and symptoms that make you think, okay, maybe I should go and get some further investigation and potentially even seeing a GP or going to the emergency room if there are certain things going on. So I've done that. That's episode 2 on the podcast. And there's also a blog article which has basically all of the signs and symptoms to look out for. So yeah, if you are particularly feeling things like significant like nerve symptoms down the leg, numbness around your groin area, changes to your bladder and bowel control with your back pain, those type of things, or dizziness, nausea, if you have upper back pain, falling over, like sudden changes in your swallowing or your speech, things like that. So look at the blog post if you are interested in that. Then there are certain things where you're like, okay, don't just download the app and try and get stuck into exercise. Like you really need to get that looked at. But just to be clear, like, yeah, not all symptoms are equal. So just because you have a sore back doesn't mean you can't exercise, but there are certain things that are really important to look out for. So do check that out.
And for everyone watching who would like to connect with you, Phil, where can they find you?
Yeah, I think ADPT Physio, if you Google that, you'll find my website. And if you look on social media, pretty easy to find there, or Phil White Physio on Instagram as well. And yeah, I've just started doing these podcasts, trying to get quite a few out per week. They're just short and fairly actionable. So yeah, that's the Things I Wish My Patients Knew podcast.
Awesome. Fantastic. Exciting.
Rock
We're
on.
going to get into our daily coaching, and of course, we'll see you all again tomorrow. Thank you so much, Phil. I'll see you this afternoon. And thank you, Richie. Thank you, Rad.
No worries.
Thanks, Phil.
Get at it.
Good times.
Guys, soon.
See ya.